Hey everybody, Ingra Sparkman here from Southbridge Street Live, and I just wanted to let you guys know that we have banded together with CASA, Golden Crescent CASA of Victoria, for their annual backpack drive. Now I know it's summertime, so this is a crazy time to be thinking about school, but for organizations like CASA, they need to gather materials and supplies for children all year long. So this is it for the next couple of weeks on Southbridge Live. You're going to see that some of my guests will be bringing in backpacks themselves. If you also would like to donate a backpack or school supplies, you can come by our studio at 1102 North William Street, or you can call me at 361-649-1825, and I'll be happy to come by, pick up backpacks and supplies to help support our local Golden Crescent CASA. Hi everybody, happy Tuesday and welcome to another edition of Southbridge Street Live. I am here with my very special guest. This is Kathleen Carey, and you are from the Hospice of South Texas, which is Victoria's only nonprofit
Yes, ma'am.
hospice, and it's going to be celebrating its 34th year.
The 34th year this year,
Yes.
and then next year's the big one, 35.
The big 3-5.
Yeah, we started back in the 80s
Oh,
with crazy hair.
what would I not do to go back to the big 3-5?
Me too.
How long have you been with hospice?
Let's see, I think I'm celebrating, 14 and a half years now.
Wow.
So it'll be 15 in January. And hoping the next 15 years, right before I retire, that's where I'll stay.
Right.
Unless they don't like me anymore.
You're so silly. But you know, one of the things that we were discussing before we got on air was, you know, one of the things that I wanted to ask you was what brought you to hospice? Because here's the thing about hospice. As I'm getting older and just only very recently, like in the last maybe 10 years, have experienced those end of life, you know, scenarios. And so hospice was something I'd heard about, didn't understand very much of. What brought you to hospice?
Well, I started my healthcare career in a nursing facility, and I learned a lot of stuff, and I was really, you know, I fell in love with the residents. We had a great staff, but there was always people that we sometimes turned away due to their payer source or things like that. And so their payer source. If they didn't have Medicare, if they didn't have Medicaid, you know, we had to either, you know, they had to pay private pay, and a lot of people can't do that.
Right.
And so when the opportunity came along to work in hospice care, and it's a nonprofit, and we take anyone regardless of their ability to pay. I mean, that's what our fundraisers are for.
Right.
The only thing they have to qualify for is hospice care. It was really appealing to me, and then once I dived in, it was something that I knew I never was going to stop, because
Right.
I mean, once you get in, it's a calling, it's in your heart.
I was going to say, and you have such a servant's heart, so I'm sure
well,
that
thank
was,
you.
You know, but it's one of those, I think, kind of scary things.
It is,
you know.
it is. And the great, I mean, and the wonderful thing about us, and I always tell this to people, is that I feel like nobody ever, you know, we have a rarity of people leaving. The people that I have been there with the longest have been there almost as long as me, if not longer. And we're just like one big family. So I'm always like, let our family take care of your family, because that's what we are. We cry together, we laugh together, we make fun of each other, we, you know,
Right.
cut up. And I mean, if we didn't have each other, you know, it would be a hard job.
Right.
But we all love what we do so much. And if we've had a hard day, we go into each other's offices and we talk it out. And, you know, I love talking to the families, you know, and my job is education.
I was going to just ask you, what is your role?
Yeah, my job is education. And so I go into the hospitals, doctors' offices, you know, nursing homes, anywhere that they'll let me talk. And I've been there for so long, most of them that see me coming know what I'm there for. But since the right after Harvey, when our inpatient unit opened up, you know, now that's a whole new focus for us. And we still have our home care, which is anywhere that we, you know, a patient considers home. So we go into residents, nursing homes, assisted livings, wherever they are. But now we have the added addition of our inpatient unit. and it's a short-term stay facility. But if we cannot, keep the patient at home and the family's having a hard time maintaining their pain under control or symptoms, and our goal is always to try to keep them out of the hospital because they want to stay home. They don't want to go to the hospital. The inpatient unit is our resource. And you've been there, so
Right.
you know how tranquil it is and how beautifully it's set up for not only the patients but their families as well.
Sure.
And we have had patients that have come in that have had an influx of families, and there's plenty of places for them to be. But it's a wonderful place for them to go, get things under control, maybe even educate the family a little bit more to get them back home or to get them to their next level of care if needed. It's not like a hospital, so there's no, we don't have to kick people out when it comes time where we're worried about days or we're worried about insurance, stopping. We always want to make sure the patient is taken care of before we send them back home or send them to that next level of care.
Has hospice or the practice of hospice always been around?
The word hospice, I think, was back in medieval times, but Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was the one that really brought it to the front, and I think that was in maybe the late 60s, early 70s. She wrote a book, talking about hospice care and comfort, grief, and she really was the one. I mean, she went to to Congress and did all sorts of amazing things to get hospice care basically in the books. The comfort measures need to be a part of
Was she a nurse or just
healthcare.
someone who had experience?
I've never looked up her stuff.
Yeah.
Just really knew that she was the kind of the forefront.
Sort of the woman who spearheaded the
Yeah, she was the one
the
whose
campaign.
book was made famous and really took off as far as kind of getting it into people's minds that comfort care was, palliative care was something that we need to look at in healthcare. And I always tell people, we spend 9 months getting ready for a baby. And we prepare, we get a room ready, we buy things, we do all these things. And I always feel that we need to spend just as much time when people leave this earth. We want people to live their best life. And if it comes to us going in and taking care of their pain, their symptoms, they always have somebody with them that's kind of maintaining and caring for them at home, whether it's a spouse, an older child. We've had cousins, we've had, friends, clergy, you name it, they've been caregivers. And we come in and educate them so those people can stay home. And if they're up and about and saying, I'm still going to go to my bridge game or I'm still going to go eat lunch with my friends, we want them to be able to do that. And if we're keeping them pain-free and comfortable to be able to still go do those things, then that is wonderful, because people really misunderstand that, end-of-life care doesn't mean you're in the bed, you're not getting out, it's over. That's not what we want it to be about. We want it to be about way before that. And that's the education part, getting
When
the
you say
doctors to
way
understand.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
Way before year.
So Medicare
Yes.
stipulations
Tell
is
me about
if,
the-
yes,
tell
you gotta have
me
to talk
about
about Medicare. If the doctor says, yes, I think this patient is going to have 6 months or less, if the terminal illness progresses where it's supposed to go, then we start talking about, okay, are the aggressive treatments that they're wanting, or they do want it or they don't want it? Then we start talking about palliative care, comfort measures. And if they choose that they want comfort measures, then, our goal would be like, great, let's get them on hospice care, and we have to go out and evaluate them and make sure that they are eligible. But if it comes up in that 6 months and it's progressed the way it's supposed to, and they're still here, that's great. We're still going to keep them on our services. It's not 6 months and we go, oh, time's up.
Right. You should have.
Yeah. This should have been done.
We were told.
Yeah.
Right, at 6 months. Right.
So we don't do that. If
Right.
it's a year, we keep them on that year, and with Medicare, you're always having a certification period. You're always coming back and recertifying, making sure the patient is still eligible for hospice care. We have had patients that get on our services and get better. and get off of our services and go back on to aggressive treatment, or if just live their lives until they need us again.
Right.
And they come back
So
on.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if you have, let's give an example, somebody that's been going through chemotherapy or radiation, and they're tired and they're exhausted and they can't do it anymore. They're in pain. So the doctor says, well, let's go, for comfort measures and try that. And
What are comfort measures?
and
by
comfort measures,
definition?
we talk about pain management, symptom management, if there's, nausea or vomiting, if there's anything else that's going on with the patient, then we want to make sure those things are taken. Lots of anxiety sometimes.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Just because of what they're dealing with. And this is physical, spiritual, psychosocial.
Right.
There's so many pains and anxieties that we can talk about, that's not just physical. And get those things under control for the patient. And sometimes those patients get stronger and better. And then they can go back to what they were doing. If they want to go back to aggressive treatment, or they found something different that they might want to try. And that's why we're always talking, we talked about this before, getting them on earlier, and having those talks, being okay to talk about it with your family, to talk about it with your physician. This is what I want for end-of-life care. And not being scared to discuss it with people, and not being scared yourself to have it.
So let's stop there for a second and talk about that.
Okay.
Which is, what do you think is the hardest thing for the patient or for the person
Well, people hear
to come to
hospice,
terms with?
and they think about, I'm going to die. And, we at Hospice of South Texas really it just makes our skin crawl just even hearing it, because we don't want people to think that way about us, because we want people to live their best life, give life to their days. And whatever days you have left, depending on how long, the disease process takes, let us be there to take care of you, to comfort you. We're extra eyes and ears, for the family, for the patient. Our nursing staff comes in, our certified nurses aides come in, you have availability of our full-time medical directors. We always tell people, you can have as many people or as little people as you want traipsing into your home to take care of you.
Right.
But you have the availability to call us 24 hours a day to keep up with you. If you have something that's, pain in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, we don't want you to have to go to the hospital. We want you to call us, and let's see what we can do to keep you at home and keep you comfortable.
Right.
Whether it's increasing a pain med, or maybe just, talking to the caregiver and giving them some comfort because they're worried. Those things are things that we can do on a daily basis to help our patients and their families. Because it's not just about the patient. We have to take care of the caregiver. We have to take care of the family's needs as well.
But I was and thank you for that. But I was saying, I meant it from like a personal standpoint. What are some of the fears and some of the anxieties and some of the struggles that you see with an individual who is faced with?
Well, it's almost like a grieving process.
For them?
For them.
Wow.
So, you go through anger, you go through being upset, you go through, why me, the things, you get mad at God.
Oh, these are the stages of
Yeah, it's like
grief.
the stages of grief.
Wow.
But you're having a state, you can grieve over anything, but you grieve over the fact that you just found out you have a terminal illness. And sometimes people stay in the anger phase for a while, which is normal. Any phase is normal. Not believing it. I'm fine. And we have people that do that. We live in a rural community. People on the outskirts, they will come in when they're crawling to the doctor at that point, and then find out that they have something terminal, and are shocked in disbelief, and so are their families. And then you have people that come in who they hear their parent or their loved one on the phone, and they come in for vacation, and they write, wow, mom and dad really aren't as strong as they sound on the phone. And it's because these people are putting up a good front.
Right.
Because, if anybody's like my parents or my grandparents, I'm fine, everything's great. It's just a cold, nobody wants to go to the doctor if they don't have to.
Right.
I go to the doctor if I have just a little bit of something, just because I don't want to be sick around a bunch of people that I go see.
Right, I understand that.
But most people don't really want to do that. And they get shocked if they're given news, whether it's chronic, and that's, prior to being a terminal illness, and so they need somebody to help them. And with our palliative care in the hospitals, they kind of walk people through the process of what this disease is going to do and how it's going to work, how you're going to feel, what we need to do to take care of it. And Dr. Meyer, who is our full-time medical director, and Dr. Whitehouse, they kind of educate people on, you know, this is where this disease process is going. And, you know, do they take comfort from it? I hope so. But it's always still a shock. And so for the longest time, that's what's going to happen. They're going to be in shock. I don't know what to do. And a lot of times their stints in the hospital are short. And, you know, it's usually like, what do you want to do? Do you want home health? Do you want hospice? Where do you want to go from here? And it's our job to come in and try to ease the situation, educate, make it not so fast and furious, because we want them to be able to take their time to make a decision on what they would like. And if we could get doctors to refer earlier, if we could get people that are fearful of the disease process to kind of open up and discuss it with their families, you know, it's a hard thing. You know, you don't want to do it, but if there's anything that hospice has taught me, it's that you have to be open to all situations, because it's all different. Every family, every patient, everyone you talk to is different. And this person may have the same disease, but they treated both people differently. And one person may be fine, the other person has pain, and they can't compare.
Or certainly levels of anxiety.
Absolutely.
And where they are.
No, it takes a village to, you know, see those things in each person. And you'll have somebody say, well, my friend has this, but she's not dealing with the same things I'm dealing with. Well, of course she's not, you know, because she may not have anxiety, or she may have a lot of anxiety and you don't. Some people are more at peace with things, you know, like I envision you finding out you have a terminal illness, and because you're Ingra, you'll be like, oh, let's talk about on Southbridge Live, you know, let's open up and have a discussion, you know.
I would be at peace. That wasn't always the case for me. There were, when I was growing up, when I was younger, very, very fearful.
Yeah, and everybody is, you know, our 5-year-old right now, every time he sees something on TV about somebody that's sick or dying, he immediately crawls into my lap and says, I don't want you to die.
Oh, I know.
And
it's very hard
because he's 5. And when you're young, you see
Mm-hmm.
those things and it scares you.
What are the kind of conversations that you have with him about death?
Well, you know, in our grief library and, you know, things that you look up when we start talking about people dying and death, there's certain, you know, trigger words that you're not supposed to use. And you don't ask me what they are because I can't remember. So I read it quickly, and, you know, especially with our animals, because usually that's the first thing that children see is an animal passing away. And you don't want to say, we put them down, you know, they went to sleep, because your child's going to immediately go, oh, I'm not going to go to bed, you know. And so that's what we kind of started with. But we talk about them going to hang out with Jesus, and that they get to be with him all the time. And, you know, he goes to Nazareth, so he understands.
For him, that's right.
You know, so he gets it. And he always talks about them coming back, or if we're going to see him again. And I said, well, you will, but not, you know, not now. You know, so it's a long conversation, because there's a lot of whys and, you know, how it goes. And with our social workers and chaplains at Hospice of South Texas, they too have to have those conversations, because not all of our terminally ill are 65 and over.
Right.
So we have people our age, we have children, we have, you know, and they have children. And so they still have to have those conversations with children as well. And they are so much better at it than I am. You know, that's why they have their degrees in these things, because they know how to do it. And we have some phenomenal chaplains and social workers that even go out in the communities whenever we have situations.
Now, I know that hospice is faith-based, but that it won't matter if someone comes to you that is Christian or atheist or Buddhist or agnostic.
Our chaplain, Larry Green's always put it the best, and he says, you know, I'm going to walk that journey with that patient, whatever that journey is. So if it's somebody that's never been to church and now they want to talk about it, or you know, an atheist, you know, we've had Buddhists, we've had Jewish, you name it. I think he's had people that the patient is one, denomination, and the caregiver, the loved one, is another one, and they're both conflicting on how things, need to be
Sure.
done. And they can smooth it out, and get everybody on the same page.
Which reminds me that fear of death was so heavy on me, even as a young adult. And it just took one time, one person, I'll never forget, just said, why be afraid? It's just a part of the cycle.
Right.
And in that moment, it brought me peace.
And when you look at cultures and different places, like we have one of our medical directors is from India, and everything is part of life. So they celebrate a birth as much as they celebrate a death.
Right.
And it's, to him, it's just another stage.
Okay, I will say this too. In the Hispanic culture, Dias de los Muertos, and the celebration of that life, is probably one of the most comforting, most incredible to me holidays or celebrations.
Sure.
And not what I had grown up with in the North or experienced in different countries.
Well, and bereavement is
Right.
part of what Hospice of South Texas does. And gosh, we've seen so many different cultures and so many different families, and everyone is different on how they perceive it. And when I say getting us in earlier, because we don't want bereavement to be the only thing that we can do for a family by the time we get them on our services.
I see.
And we stay with families, for at least 13 months to make sure that they go through all the first of that loved one passing away.
Oh, I can't even imagine, because isn't anger one of the first stages?
Well, sure,
So
but if
you're-
they've been
there.
dealing with it for a long time, we'll call somebody and they'll be like, you know what, I'm fine.
Yeah.
This was a blessing. And then others, when they had just found out about it right before the patient went on hospice services, then yes, anger is definitely there. It, like I said, depends on the family, depends on what they've been through. We've had caregivers that have come in with their loved ones that have been caring for them for years, and they're finally getting on hospice services now because the disease has gotten to that point.
Right.
But they are at peace by the time it's all over. And so our bereavement, we have our grief counseling, we have all that, and they don't use much of it because they're okay. I went to a visitation the other day, and it was like a party. And and then you'll go to another visitation, and it's a visitation.
Right.
It just kind of depends on the family and the culture and everything you deal with, because I walked in and I kind of looked around to make sure I was in the right place because everybody was giggling and laughing and having a good time, and you just never know what you're going to walk into.
So I've never asked anyone this before ever, but I'm going to put it back on you, which is what your eyes.
Sorry.
Ooh, those are big, beautiful eyes already. So, but what about for you? Where will you be when it comes time? Because you've gone through this, and because you've
Completely at peace.
yeah.
I mean, I know where I'm going. I know where I've been, and I always think about my grandmother when I was 23. If I knew then what I know now, I would have told her to, just stop what you're doing and let's enjoy life for a little bit longer. And seeing the families, seeing the people, it doesn't scare me anymore.
What are the tough questions? I'm not going to ask you the tough questions. What are the most common questions that the people who are receiving the hospice service and the families have?
Well, first of all, they want to. If they don't know what we do, that's the first.
Right, what do we do?
How much are you going to be in the home? What services are you providing? We always try to let everybody know we're supportive care, so we're not there 24 hours a day, but we're available 24 hours a day. And so we go through all of that, and after it's all over, the biggest question is, why didn't I know about you earlier? Why didn't the doctors, why didn't somebody mention comfort measures prior to this?
That's interesting. You want to talk about that for just a second?
Well, and that's the thing I told you earlier, is that I tell people, you're the one that really has to take control of your health care and be open to those conversations, because doctors don't want to give up. I mean, that's their that's what they're a doctor. They don't want to give up, and
I see.
their philosophy is, if I say, okay, it's time for comfort measures, then I'm failing in some way. We have a new generation of doctors that have actually gone through palliative care training, and so now it's not.
Explain palliative care.
Well,
because I know the word palliative.
Well, palliative is just comfort measures,
Right.
and I mean
What is
and so
acceptable
you're basically dealing with no aggressive treatment. We're dealing with pain management, like we talk about the anxiety, anything that they're dealing with, making them comfortable.
Thank you. And
Taking
doctors
care
have
of
been trained.
right, and taking care of symptom management, and now. Most of the doctors will say, hospice has the doctors that can do these things for you, and it's better for them to deal with the pain management, because of the pain meds and everything like that. So we work well with all the doctors in town, and they consult with our doctors and vice versa.
Right.
They're very open because the palliative care, supportive care team that we have in the hospital. Basically work with the doctors to go in and just give those families more education on the disease process and what are we going to do once we get out of the hospital.
Does an individual have complete control of how they want their end of life care to be?
Yes, more so now than ever. It is your right to do whatever you want to. If you don't want to do aggressive treatment, if you want comfort measures, then do it. If you don't want comfort measures and you want aggressive treatment, that is up to you. If you want to be hooked up to everything out of every orifice in the hospital, that is your prerogative. But that is why I say you have to educate your families on what you want. Because you'll have family members that say, she told me that she didn't want this, this, and this. And, we talk about medical power of attorney, the things that we need for someone when they cannot make their own choices, because it is your choice. It is your prerogative on whatever you want as far as healthcare is concerned. But you have to make those choices known to everyone in your family, your doctor, wherever you're going, to make sure that they understand that's what you want.
I see. And what about generationally? Because we are doing a lot of studies right now, just working through one of the topics that we have here for Words of Wisdom, which is how many veterans, World War II veterans, we're losing a day. Is this generationally for you the biggest time that hospice has seen in its 35 years?
Well, since I've only been there 14 and a half, I can say
Thank
that...
you. I meant, you know what I'm saying, during the
Well,
time
yeah.
you've been there.
I mean, I can say that of course, everybody always talks about the baby boomers being the biggest, of all the generations.
Right.
And so we are now in that throw.
Yes, thank you. That's where I was going with
Yeah,
that.
and so we, you have people that are, like my parents that don't take a lick of medication, and they're still blowing and going.
And that's what I was wondering too, because in that generation,
yeah,
you were saying about the rural area, but the generation, I feel like as a whole, they're very much like, I don't need it. It's not.
No, getting them to the doctor is like pulling teeth,
Yes.
or you have people that are, as long as they find one that they like and they're comfortable with them, then, they'll stick with it. But getting them to that point is always it's very hard. And, I remember, like I said, again, my grandmother, and she'd be in her hundreds now. She was still alive, but she just didn't want to talk about it. We don't want to upset anybody. And I think that's what it is that when you're the matriarch or the patriarch, you want to be the strong one. You don't want anybody to know that you're sick, and they hold on to it. And so when they finally do get that care, sometimes they're still trying to hold on to it. I'm fine. We have patients that will probably be in the 10th level of pain, but I'm fine. Everything's good. I can manage it on my own. The allowing somebody in to take care of you is so difficult in some of those generations, and letting somebody in your home that's a complete stranger to come and take care of you. On the flip side, if they don't want to talk to their families about it, sometimes they're okay to talk to strangers about it.
Right.
So we get our social workers in there, and they're just, letting loose on things that they need to talk about, because they were tired of talking about their family. They don't want to talk to their family about it anymore, or they don't want to upset their family.
Right.
So it's amazing to me to see the differences. We'll have somebody that say, please don't wear your badge. We don't want mom to know she's on hospice services. And then you go in and see mom, and mom goes, don't talk about my terminal illness to the family. They get too upset. I know everything. I know what's happening. And we go, okay. Somebody needs to get somebody in here and start talking,
Sure.
get everybody
Right.
together. So that's what our social workers do, and they're amazing at it. We have people that literally have nothing, and so our social workers come in and try to work on getting them Medicaid or, any type of government assistance. And then the chaplains come in. I mean, our chaplains are amazing. And they can get anyone talking about anything, and people just adore them when they come in. And like I said, they walk the journey, so it doesn't matter what denomination they are, they're going to get to talking, because there can be pain spiritually, emotionally, not just physical.
Right.
Making sure maybe there's a loved one that they want to see that they haven't seen. There's so many aspects of it. I'll walk in, if I walk into a hospital and there's like 20 people in the room, I'm like, okay, who's my point of contact, and try to get a feel of the family.
Right.
Because when we go in and our initial contact with them, we want our nursing staff, everyone to know when we type it up to say, okay, this is the family, this is the dynamics, to prepare anybody that walks in the home. You're going to see 20,000 people, or this person is by themselves.
Right.
And it can be one extreme or the other. You just never know what you're dealing with when you walk in. So, but it's amazing every day because it's always new and different.
Right. Right. Now, what about volunteers? Do you have volunteer opportunities for hospice?
Well, our whole life could not be what it is without our volunteers. So, I mean, and we have so many volunteer opportunities simply because not only do we have volunteers that do actually go and hang out with our patients, we have volunteers that work in the office. We have volunteers that answer phones out at our inpatient unit. We have volunteers that do just about everything. And so we always have opportunities. And Devery Cole at Hospice South Texas is our volunteer coordinator, director. And anybody that's interested, we love to have, new fresh faces there. We have our volunteers that come in on Fridays. We call them the happy hookers, and they come in and they do our prayer shawls. They do their crocheting. And I always tell somebody, if you want to learn, come in on a Friday afternoon and they'll show you how to do it.
That's so neat.
Yeah, absolutely. I had one of my marketing friends, she's like, well, I'm over there on Fridays. And I was like, well, what do you do? And she's like, I'm learning to crochet. And she goes in, she's learning how to crochet because they pray over the prayer shawls, they're making them, and those ladies can whip those prayer shawls out. And they're crocheting all the time. And I've seen it grow from like a small group of people to this huge amount of women when I walk in, making these beautiful prayer shawls that we give to every patient when they come on our services.
It's like you said, it really does take a village.
It does. It absolutely does. And we have volunteers. I mean, the amazing thing is, sometimes we've had a couple of barbecue cook-offs, and they donate the proceeds to Hospice of South Texas. And that's a third-party fundraiser where all we have to do is go in and eat the barbecue, judge it. And I'm happy as heck to do something like that, as well as my staff. I mean, they're all so happy to, all we have to do is go and eat some barbecue. That's great. And it's so wonderful that we have those opportunities to have people that give.
My bet is that those types of third-party fundraisers are people who have gone through
Oh,
that
absolutely.
have gone through the motions with hospice, and that's their way to say thank you.
Right. And a lot of times, we've had, and sometimes it's our volunteers that have said, hey, let's do it for Hospice of South Texas.
Right.
So we have a lot of, I can tell you that our biggest referral source is probably friends and family. People that have gone through the experience and have been on our services.
Have been touched.
And have been touched.
Right.
And they'll say, you need to call them, or, I mean, I've had my same phone number for 20 years, and my mom and several friends give it out freely to people that need some information.
Right.
And it's one of those things where I'm always happy to talk about it, and I tell them, midnight, noon, whatever you want to talk about it, I'll talk about it, because I have a passion for it, and I love it.
Right.
And I can't think of anybody there that I work with that doesn't. They're
Right.
not just going through the motions.
It's really a job that I would assume that you would have to have a passion for.
You
because
have to.
because
It's a
really
calling.
calls. There
Yeah,
you go.
it's a
It calls
calling.
for that. Yeah.
And those that are in there, I mean, you know, even some of our newer nurses, you know, when they come on, they're like, I just felt like it was something I needed to do, or they had an experience where they felt like
Right.
end of life care was something that they wanted
Right.
to go forward with. And it's amazing what they tell me, like after they've been doing it for a while, because they just adore their patients, they adore the families. You know, you always find these bonds that you have with these, you know, wonderful people, because you know, regardless of how many patients you see a day, you know, every single one of them is important with their families.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that you just can't get away from.
Is there any particular way you want to end it? Is this for the interview? Is there anything that most people you want to, you know, portray to people, or how would you? I'm just trying to think of. You know,
I think
we've
the thing I
covered a
would
lot.
end with is don't be afraid of discussing comfort measures and end of life care. You know, there's so many times where people will say, you know, mom or dad said they don't want this done or that done, and you know, in that same breath, I say, well, great, you know, comfort measures should be the thing that you think about,
Right.
and hospice care is there. I couldn't see why anybody wouldn't want extra eyes and ears on their loved one when they come to that point. You know, so many people say, I promised mom or dad I would take them home.
Right.
People really have no idea what that entails. And they get into it and they go, oh my God, I need help.
Right.
And
that's okay.
And it's okay.
Right.
But we just want to make sure that they know what they're getting into and what the availability is to help somebody. You know, with hospice services, you know, you're dealing with our durable medical equipment, you're getting a hospital bed, you're getting all these things in the home that you may not be able to do on your
Right,
own.
likewise, yeah.
And you're getting all these people that care about you. And like I said, it takes a village. And we're there to help. We want our family to help your family. And I can't think of any better way that I would want to end my existence is to be pain-free, comfortable, and surrounded by my loved ones. And we hope that we can do that for our patients on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Thank you so much
You're
for coming in
welcome.
and talking about this, and a conversation that needs to be had.
It
It's-
is,
or
and
just
but
that
it's a wonderful.
important to have, right?
Well, it's a part of life.
Circle of
happens.
life. Thank you so much, Kathleen, for being here.
Thank you,
And
Ingrid.
for what you do for hospice. I think that's amazing.
Well, what we all do, I couldn't do it without my team because they're phenomenal.
Good. Well, we can shout out to your team. Shout out.
I love you all, and you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for watching South Bridge Street Live.